The desert stretched endlessly, a vast ocean of dust and stone beneath a sky that burned like copper. The sun had not yet sunk, but it already carried the weight of judgment, pressing down on every creature that dared to move across that wasteland. The land was quiet, too quiet. Even the vultures circled far away, as if unwilling to waste their strength on such barren silence. A single rider cut through that immensity. Jonas Kane, a man known across territories as a hunter of men, sat tall in the saddle, his eyes hidden beneath the brim of a weather-beaten hat. His face was carved by sun and sand, his jaw locked tight as though he had long ago run out of words worth saying. Every step of the horse sent a small cloud of dust into the air, falling back like tired ghosts. Behind him, tied to the horse with coarse ropes, rode a woman, Elena. Her wrists bore the marks of restraint, and her dress, once white, was now stained with earth and sweat. Yet her back remained straight, her head lifted high. The desert might grind men into silence, but it did not claim her spirit. Her dark eyes fixed on the horizon as though daring the desert itself to break her. She was the first to speak. Her voice cut the stillness like a blade. "You can drag me to the gallows if you must, Kane, but it won't change who I am." Kane did not turn his face. He kept his gaze on the horizon, his voice dry as the sand beneath the horse's hooves. "Every prisoner claims innocence. You're not the first." Elena's lips curved in something between a smile and a wound. "Not every prisoner loves the man who condemns her." The words hung heavy between them. Kane's jaw clenched, but he gave no reply. He had heard 1,000 pleas, 1,000 lies, from men and women who swore the law had wronged them. He had long ago built walls against their voices. And yet something in the way she said it, calm, certain, without trembling, slipped through the cracks. The sun dipped lower, throwing long shadows across the sand. The horse pressed on, carrying them both into the heart of silence. Kane's mind was steady, focused on the reward promised for Elena's capture, gold enough to silence doubt, to drown conscience. But when he risked a glance over his shoulder, he caught the fire in her eyes, and for the briefest moment he felt less like a hunter and more like a man carrying judgment he was not ready to pass. The desert offered no comfort, only distance, and in that distance the silence grew heavier. Kane knew the journey ahead would not be broken only by gunfire or thirst. It would be broken by the voice of the woman he carried, the voice that refused to be silenced by ropes or by fate. Night fell hard over the desert, as it always did, without mercy, without pause. The heat of day was gone, replaced by a wind sharp enough to cut through skin and bone. The stars burned cold in the heavens, scattered like shards of glass across black velvet. In the emptiness, a single fire crackled, small and stubborn against the vast silence. Kane sat near it, his broad shoulders hunched, the revolver resting across his lap. With slow, deliberate movements, he dismantled the weapon piece by piece. Each metallic click echoed like a ritual, steady and precise. He had done it 1,000 times, cleaning, oiling, reassembling, because steel did not lie, steel did not betray, steel did not weep. Across the flames, Elena sat with her knees drawn close to her chest, her wrists still raw from the ropes. The fire painted her face in uneven light, one side in glow, the other in shadow. Her eyes stayed fixed on him, unyielding as if watching him would keep her spirit alive. At last her voice broke the silence. "They killed my husband," she said, low but clear. "And when the blood dried, they pointed to me, said I lured him into danger, said I wanted him gone." Kane kept cleaning the revolver, each motion deliberate. He did not look up. His silence pressed heavier than words. Elena's tone sharpened. "I never held a gun in my life, Kane. The only weapon I ever knew was trust. And that's what they used to destroy me." Still, Kane said nothing. He slid the cylinder back into place, the cold click carrying more judgment than any courtroom. Yet Elena leaned forward, her face lit by the restless fire. "Why do you hunt people?" she asked. "Is it for justice or for gold?" His eyes finally lifted, steel meeting flame. For a moment the wind seemed to die. His voice came rough, dragged by years of dust. "I hunt because it's all I know, The law pays me, the law feeds me. Nothing more. Elena shook her head slowly. The law isn't justice. If it were, I wouldn't be here. The fire snapped, sending a shower of sparks into the night. One ember landed on her dress, and she brushed it away with a quick motion. Kane's gaze lingered, not on the ember, but on the determination etched into her features. She was not pleading. She was not begging. She was defying. He looked away, back to the revolver. His fingers traced the grooves of the steel, but his mind wandered where he did not want it to go. He had seen the eyes of the guilty many times, eyes that begged, eyes that lied, eyes that fled. Hers were not the same. The desert wind moaned through the rocks, carrying with it the chill of 1,000 graves. Kane holstered the revolver, his face unreadable. But deep inside, a thought whispered where he could not silence it. Perhaps this time the chains bound not just a prisoner, but his own conscience. The sun rose fierce and merciless, chasing away the cold shadows of night. By the time Kane and Elena resumed their journey, the desert already burned with the weight of heat. The horse plodded forward, head low, each hoofstep puffing up tiny clouds of dust that clung to skin and breath. Hours passed in silence. Kane rode ahead, his eyes always on the horizon, every muscle of his body alert for danger. Elena followed close behind, tied still, her gaze roaming the endless dunes. Though the ropes dug into her wrists, she carried herself upright, as if refusing to bend beneath either the desert or the man who bound her. It was Kane who sensed them first, a ripple in the horizon, the faint tremor of earth beneath the horse's hooves. He pulled the reins sharply, raising a hand. The desert seemed still, too still. Then came the sound, hooves pounding in rhythm, distant at first, then louder. Elena's eyes widened. They've found us. Out of the shimmering haze, riders emerged. 4 men, faces hidden by dusty scarves, rifles glinting in the sun. They spread wide, encircling, their leader raising a hand. His voice carried rough and certain. Hand over the woman, Kane. She's worth more alive to us than dead in your care. Kane dismounted slowly, the leather of his boots crunching against the sand. His hand rested on the revolver, calm, steady. He glanced back at Elena. If you want her, he said flatly, come and take her. The first shot split the silence, loud as thunder. A bullet struck the ground near Kane's feet, spraying sand. In the same breath, his revolver barked back. One rider fell from his horse with a scream, tumbling into dust. Chaos erupted. Horses reared, sand exploded under pounding hooves, and the air filled with the sharp stench of gunpowder. Kane rolled behind a low rock, firing with precision. Each shot was deliberate, measured, as though he carried no fear, only certainty. Elena struggled against her ropes, her heart hammering. A pistol lay in the dirt not far from her, dropped by the fallen rider. She scrambled, fingers raw and desperate, dragging the weapon toward her. Kane noticed, his voice cutting through the battle. Run, he shouted, get away. But she did not run. With trembling hands, she lifted the pistol, aimed at the shadow rushing toward Kane, and fired. The shot rang wild but true. The bandit collapsed mid-stride, clutching his chest. Kane turned, caught between surprise and fury. You could have escaped. Elena's breath came ragged, her hand still shaking around the pistol. And leave you to die alone? For a heartbeat, the battle seemed to pause. Then the last 2 riders pressed forward, rifles raised. Kane moved like a shadow, dropping one with a shot to the chest, the other with a bullet through the arm. The man fled, screaming curses as he vanished into the horizon. Silence returned, heavy and brutal. The bodies lay scattered in the sand, blood already drying under the sun. Elena stood, still gripping the pistol, her eyes locked on Kane's. He looked at her long and hard. Then, with a voice rough as gravel, he said, You don't shoot like someone who never held a gun. Elena drew a deep breath. When life depends on it, you learn fast. The desert wind swept across the plain, carrying away the smoke of gunfire, but not the weight of what had just been revealed between them. The desert gave nothing freely. By the time night fell again, the 2 of them carried more than dust and exhaustion. They carried the memory of blood left behind. The fire Kane built was small, just enough to keep the coyotes away and warm the silence between them. Elena sat across from him, her wrists still bound though looser now, her eyes reflecting the flames. She no longer looked like a prisoner, but like someone standing trial in the court of his gaze. Kane, as always, kept his hands busy, sharpening the edge of a knife, checking the sights of the revolver, cleaning grit from the barrel. His silence weighed heavier than the desert wind. Finally, Elena spoke. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of memory. "You wonder why they came after me, Kane. It isn't just a bounty. It's him." Kane looked up, the knife paused in his hand. "Who?" She stared into the fire, her eyes distant. "Vargas!" The name hung in the air like smoke, bitter and choking. Kane's jaw tightened. He knew the name. Everyone did. Vargas wasn't just a man. He was a shadow that stretched across the frontier, a former soldier turned warlord, leaving behind towns burned and graves unmarked. Elena's voice dropped to a whisper, as though even the desert might be listening. "He killed my husband, said the man owed him, said debts must be paid in blood. When I screamed for justice, they silenced me, and when Vargas wanted me for himself, the law turned its back. Easier to call me guilty than to stand against him." Kane studied her in silence. He had chased many men, brought in killers, thieves, outlaws of every shade. But Vargas was something else. He had never hunted him, because men like Vargas were never hunted. They were survived. Elena leaned forward, her face lit with firelight. "You think I lie, but I swear it, Kane. Vargas won't stop until I'm his. Dead or alive, he'll take me, and anyone who stands in his way will fall." The fire popped, sending sparks into the dark. Kane's grip tightened around the knife, his eyes narrowing. He did not like being told of doom, did not like the way her words stirred something dangerous in his chest. At last he muttered, "I've seen the eyes of the guilty. Yours aren't the same." For a moment silence returned, broken only by the hiss of burning wood. Elena's breath caught at his words. A thin crack opened in the wall of doubt between them, though neither dared step through it. The desert wind rose, cold and sharp, wrapping around them like a warning. In the distance, coyotes howled, their cries stretching across the night like omens. Kane reached for his revolver and checked the chamber, as if expecting the darkness itself to ride down upon them. Because now, with Vargas's name spoken aloud, Kane knew the hunt was no longer about a bounty. It was about survival, and the shadow of a man who ruled through fear alone. The road carried them into a village that had once known life, but now breathed only dust and silence. Wooden buildings sagged under the weight of time, windows broken, doors hanging loose. The only sound was the faint squeak of a rusted sign rocking in the wind. Kane slowed his horse, eyes scanning every shadow. Elena, still tied but less tightly than before, followed with her head high, her dark hair tangled from days beneath the sun. She felt it before she saw it, the oppressive weight in the air, the hush of a place claimed by something more than emptiness. And then he appeared. Vargas. He rode in from the far side of town, astride a black stallion, his long coat whipping with the wind, his face half hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. A scar traced across his cheek like a brand of violence, and his eyes gleamed pale, almost silver, with a calm that unsettled more than rage ever could. Around him gathered half a dozen riders, rough men with rifles across their backs. But Vargas himself needed no weapon in hand to command the ground beneath him. The stallion stamped once, and silence deepened. "Well," Vargas drawled, his voice deep and smooth, carrying across the village square like smoke. "If it isn't Jonas Kane, the Hound of the Desert, I wondered when fate would cross our paths." Kane dismounted slowly, every movement deliberate, his revolver resting near his hip. His gaze never left the man before him. "Didn't come here for you, Vargas." A cold smile curved across Vargas's scarred face. "Ah, but you brought me something that is mine." His pale eyes slid toward Elena. "The woman always runs, but the desert always leads her back." Elena's chest rose and fell sharply, but her voice rang firm. "I was never yours." Vargas chuckled, a low, mocking sound. "In the desert, everything belongs to the man strong enough to claim it. And you, Elena, you were claimed long ago." Kane's jaw clenched, his hand hovering closer to the revolver. "If you want her," he said, his tone flat and unyielding, "you'll have to take her." The men around Vargas stirred, rifles shifting, eyes narrowing. The tension pressed like a storm ready to break. Elena's heart hammered, every breath sharp. The ropes on her wrists no longer felt like chains, only reminders of how little stood between life and death. Vargas's smile faded, replaced by something colder. "You've made a mistake, Kane. I take what I want. That's why I'm still standing while better men than you rot beneath the sand." The desert wind swept through the broken street, scattering dust, rattling wood, as though the whole world waited for the first gunshot. Kane's stance never wavered. Elena's eyes locked on him, torn between terror and something fiercer. Hope that he would not yield. Vargas leaned forward in the saddle, his pale eyes gleaming. "I'll give you one chance, Hunter. Hand her over and I'll let you leave this place breathing." Kane's reply was a whisper, but it carried like thunder. "She's not yours to claim." And in that breath, Elena understood. The desert was no longer her prison. It was their battlefield. The first shot cracked like thunder. Dust leapt from the ground, windows shattered, and the deserted village came alive with chaos. Vargas's men dismounted in a rush, rifles firing wild, bullets sparking against wood and stone. Horses shrieked, scattering into the alleys as the storm of violence swallowed the square. Kane moved like a shadow. His revolver barked once, twice, each shot precise. A man dropped from a porch, another spun backward into the dirt, his rifle clattering beside him. Kane did not waste bullets. He had none to spare. Elena ducked behind a water trough, her chest pounding. Splinters rained as bullets chewed through the wood. She spotted a shotgun propped against the saloon wall, abandoned in haste. Crawling through dust and broken glass, she grabbed it, her hands trembling but steady enough to hold the weight. "Kane!" she shouted. He turned just as a bandit lunged from the doorway with a knife raised high. Elena pulled the trigger. The blast thundered, hurling the man backward in a spray of dust and blood. Kane gave her a brief nod before rolling behind a wagon, his revolver spitting flame into the advancing gunman. Vargas sat astride his stallion, calm as a king in his court, firing with cold precision. His coat flared with each movement, and his pale eyes glimmered with satisfaction. He did not rush. He did not need to. Men died for him, and he treated their lives as coin well spent. "You can't win this, Kane," Vargas's voice carried above the storm. "The desert has already chosen," Kane answered with lead. A bullet shattered the lantern above Vargas's head, showering sparks and flame. The stallion reared, shrieking, but Vargas held steady, smiling through the chaos. Inside the saloon, Elena pressed herself against the wall, reloading the shotgun with hands raw from rope burns. She peeked out just in time to see Kane fall to one knee, his shoulder grazed by a bullet. Her breath caught, but he rose again, jaw clenched, eyes burning like iron. The battle raged until the square stank of gunpowder and death. Bodies lay twisted in the dirt, flames licked the edges of broken timbers, and the air shimmered with heat and smoke. Then silence, sudden, suffocating. Only two men stood. Vargas dismounted slowly, boots sinking into the dust. He holstered his rifle and walked forward with the calm of a predator certain of his kill. Kane stood across from him, revolver low but ready, blood staining his sleeve. The world narrowed to a circle of dust between them. Elena watched from the shadows, her heart drumming like war. She gripped the shotgun, but something in Kane's stance told her this was not her fight to end. Vargas's voice was smooth, almost tender. "I always knew, Kane. One day it would come to this. You, me, and the desert watching." Kane tipped his hat forward, his hand hovering over the revolver's grip. "There's only one desert, Vargas. It won't hold us both." The air held its breath. 2 men, 2 guns, 1 truth. Then came the thunder of shots. The echo of gunfire rolled away into the night, fading across the empty desert hills. When the dust settled, Vargas lay sprawled in the dirt of the ruined village, his pale eyes wide in disbelief, his scarred chest torn by Kane's bullet. The black stallion snorted and pawed the ground nearby, masterless at last. Kane stood tall, his revolver still smoking, but his arm bled freely, dark stains spreading across his sleeve. He holstered the weapon with deliberate slowness, as if closing a chapter carved in lead. Elena emerged from the shadows of the saloon, the shotgun still clutched in her hands. Her steps faltered as she approached the fallen body of Vargas. For years, his name had haunted her nights. His shadow had poisoned every dawn. And now, he lay silent, nothing more than a husk claimed by the desert. She looked at Kane. He swayed slightly on his feet, but his jaw was set, his eyes steady. She rushed to his side, dropping the shotgun and pressing her hands against the wound on his shoulder. "You're hurt," Kane grunted, brushing her hands away at first, then letting them stay. "Not the first time. Won't be the last." She shook her head. "You'd have bled out if I hadn't." "Don't." He cut her off, his voice sharp but softening after a beat. "Don't waste words on what didn't happen." They stood in silence, the night thick with the smell of gunpowder and fire. Around them, the bodies of Vargas's men lay where they had fallen, their lifeless eyes reflecting the cold moonlight. The desert wind stirred, carrying dust over the dead, covering them in its impartial shroud. Elena's voice broke softly. "He's gone. The man who ruined my life. He's gone." Kane looked down at Vargas's body, then at her. "Dead men don't vanish, Elena. Their ghosts ride longer than their shadows." She met his gaze, eyes glistening. "Then let me ride with yours." The words struck deeper than the bullet in his flesh. For a moment, Kane said nothing. He only watched her, weighing the fire in her eyes, the determination that had not broken even in chains. Finally, he gave a slow nod. Not a promise, not surrender, only acknowledgement. As dawn approached, Kane dragged the bodies from the square, piling them where the desert would claim them. Elena helped, her hands steady, her face hardened by necessity. When it was done, they set the broken town ablaze, flames rising into the pale sky like a pyre. The village that Vargas had claimed would now belong to no one. Kane tied his wound with a strip of cloth torn from his own shirt. Elena mounted the stallion Vargas had left behind. Kane swung into his own saddle, grimacing against the pain but showing none of it on his face. For a moment they sat side by side, watching the flames consume the last remnants of Vargas's reign. "You could still take me to the gallows," Elena said quietly. Kane's eyes stayed on the fire. "I could." Her voice steadied, filled with something close to defiance. "But you won't." At last Kane turned, meeting her gaze with the weight of choice. "No," he said. "I won't." And with that, they turned their horses toward the horizon, leaving behind the ashes and the dead. The sun rose slowly, bleeding red and gold across the desert sky. The village behind them smoldered in silence, its charred remains marked by bullet holes and broken wood. Smoke curled upward, carrying the ghosts of Vargas and his men into the morning air. Kane adjusted the saddle on his horse with one good arm, the other bound tight with Elena's makeshift bandage. His movements were slower than usual, but steady, determined. He had lived long enough to bleed without complaint. Elena stood a few feet away, brushing dust from her torn dress. The firelight of the battle still burned in her eyes, though softened now by something unfamiliar. Hope. For the first time since she had been tied to Kane's saddle, she did not feel like a prisoner. She felt like a woman standing on the edge of her own fate. Her voice broke the silence. "So, is this the part where you deliver me to the gallows?" Kane paused, reins in his hand, his back still to her. He took a deep breath, the kind a man takes when a decision weighs heavier than iron. Finally he turned, his face as hard as stone but his eyes carrying something new. "No." Elena's lips parted, her breath catching. "And the bounty." Kane met her gaze, steady, unwavering. "It's worth nothing now." The words fell between them like a verdict, final and irrevocable. The desert wind swept through, tugging at her hair, scattering ash across the ground. For a moment neither moved. Then Kane extended his hand. She hesitated. For days she had dreamed of freedom, of release from chains and the shadow of Vargas. Yet freedom now meant more than escape. It meant choice. Slowly she reached for his hand and climbed onto the saddle behind him. They rode out together, two figures cutting across the endless horizon. The desert stretched vast and merciless, but for the first time it did not feel so empty. Elena wrapped her arms around him, not in fear, but in resolve. Kane said nothing, but the weight of her touch burned warmer than the rising sun. Hours passed. The land unfolded in waves of rock and sand, dry shrubs clawing at the ground, bones of forgotten creatures bleaching in the heat. Kane's eyes never left the horizon, his instincts as sharp as ever. Yet his thoughts lingered on the woman behind him, her voice still echoing from the night before. "Then let me ride with yours." At noon they stopped at a ridge. Below stretched the open road, a ribbon of dust leading toward distant hills. Kane dismounted, scanning the horizon with his sharp hunter's eyes. Elena joined him, standing tall, her face turned toward the wind. "Where does it lead?" she asked. "Everywhere," Kane said. "Nowhere." She smiled faintly. "As long as it's not back." For the first time, Kane allowed a shadow of a smile to touch his lips. He mounted again, offering his hand without words. She took it, no longer hesitating, and together they rode on, two souls bound not by chains, but by choice. The desert lay before them, vast, endless, unforgiving, yet for the first time it did not seem so lonely.